Hello everyone, welcome to the shop. We're at the bench here working on my new acquisition, my McCulloch Super 44A chainsaw. One of the problems I noticed with it was that the oiler button, or oiler lever, which is right here next to the handle, it was stuck. It isn't anymore, but I didn't know what it was. So at first I took off the handle, made sure this part of the linkage wasn't seized up, and it wasn't. So then all there's just a rod that goes from here out to the front, and there's this little rod right there. I'll work it and you can see it move. There it is. And so as you can see, this was all fine. But what the problem was, again, this saw made a liar out of me again. In a previous video, I said that the oiler will never be stuck on a vintage chainsaw because it's immersed in oil. Well, this one was stuck. This is the oiler plunger right here, piston, plunger, whatever you want to call it. And this was stuck inside the bore. It was down pretty much about flush with this surface. And I thought, well, geez, man, how am I going to get that out? Because this is a blind hole. On the other side of the casting here, there's no other end of the hole that goes in. And well, you know what? This stuff right here, Seafoam Deep Creep. This stuff is way too expensive. It's $11 a can, but you know what? It's loosened up a lot of stuff for me as long as you use it in conjunction with your blue wrench, propane torch, and it really helped. It's helped with a lot of stuck stuff. So I set it up like this, and I squirted a little bit of oil in there because I previously tried to just push the plunger in to kind of loosen it up, but it just got it stuck further down in the bore. I thought, oh man, how am I going to get that out? So I put some oil of some Deep Creep in here, and I also put I took off the filler hose here, or the suction hose, and squirted some inside the other end of this bore, and I just heated it. And I heated it with the torch gently, and all of a sudden, pop! The spring went loose. And luckily, I didn't get any oil in my eye because it's the oil that was in here. It got shot out when the piston came out, and it sprayed on my face. And luckily, it didn't get in my eye. It was pretty close. But after that, I put safety glasses on. And it didn't come all the way out, so I repeated that process a couple of times. And then the piston came out far enough where I can grab it with tweezers or pliers and pull it out. And as it turns out, it was just a bad O-ring. Here's the plunger. You just use a pick and pick off the old O-ring, and I cleaned it up with some sandpaper. And then there's a spring that goes behind there. And that's it. It's a very simple system. And of course this gets pushed in, but I'm not all like that. Goes in like that. And then I'll leave it out a little bit because I don't want it loosening up and popping out and flying out. And so I also took this opportunity to do a little more work on the oiler, and I figured some other people might find this comes in handy. Pretty much all of the manual oilers on vintage chainsaws, whether it be McCulloch or David Bradley or Homelight or whatever, all of the oilers work pretty much the same way, and I'll show you what I mean. I made up this drawing here. It's a pretty simple schematic. Here we have the oil reservoir, and there's a line. In this case it would be that rubber suction line. Go into a check valve, and then there's your plunger, and then there's a second check valve facing the other direction in relation to the plunger, and then out of that check valve it goes out to the bar and chain. And if this doesn't look familiar to you, what a check valve is, it's basically just a seat. It's just a hole with a nice even surface, or sometimes a plastic sort of washer, so a steel ball can seat in that seat with a good seal. And then there's a spring pushing down on that ball against the seat, and that creates a seal. So in this case, with this check valve, oil is allowed to flow this way because it pushes the ball off the seat, it pushes against the spring, goes around the ball and into the plunger bore. However, oil cannot go this way because when the oil is pressurized this way, it forces the ball against the seat and seals up, so oil cannot go this way. So, with one stroke of the plunger, you push down, it pressurizes the oil in here, and it pushes this ball against the seat, so no oil can flow back into the oil reservoir because that wouldn't accomplish anything. But it does push this ball off the seat and allow oil to go out to the bar and chain. And when you let go of the plunger and the spring inside the plunger bore pushes the plunger back, the second check valve here gets sucked in, also helped by the spring, and it seats, and no oil can be sucked back through here, or air. Nothing can get sucked back. This seals off. However, with the suction created inside here, it lifts this ball off its seat and sucks oil up from the oil reservoir into the plunger, and then you can continue to pump the oil. So anyway, on this McCulloch, and I would imagine most McCullochs of this era, there are two check valves. There's one right here, and there's one here. This one is the outlet check valve. If you take off this screw and take off this plate, there will be a spring, and then there will be a ball. And be careful, you don't want to lose those because they're probably difficult to find. And if you take out this screw, there is going to be another spring and another ball. And I took those out, and as it turns out, this spring and ball, they were all corroded and dirty, and I guess this magnesium casting kind of corrodes badly. So I cleaned all that corrosion off, and I put that back together, and I took this out and I cleaned it all out, put it back together. And so now I know that the oiler is fully functional. And to test it, it's a good thing I tested it. All I did, I just set it on its side like this, and I filled up a little bit of oil in here so it covered the inlet. And I pumped this with my thumb. And it pumped oil out of the check valve, and it worked, but it was pumping a lot of bubbles, air bubbles, along with the oil. And that means it's pulling air into the system somehow. So I figured, I learned that this joint right here where the rubber hose attaches onto the fitting for the plunger bore, that was a very loose fit. And I don't really know why it's like that. It should be like a regular hose barb, like you would find on anything really. Anything where a rubber hose attaches onto a metal part. So I found this nice little small hose clamp, and I tightened it down real tight, and I filled it up again with oil, and sure enough, when I pumped it, it pumped out a good squirt of oil. And now I know that my oiler is fully functional, and now all I have to do is make another gasket, because this one looks a little worse for wear. I don't want to put this back together and have this gasket leak. But I think this is just like a paper, just a heavy paper gasket soaked in oil, so it should be pretty easy to make one. Make another gasket. That'll go on to this crankcase bottom / oil reservoir plate. Goes on like so. That's backwards. Goes on like that. Then it goes on the crankcase there. And then that plunger rod goes through everything. One other thing I might do, might find some sort of a washer to put. Right here is where the plunger rod comes through. I might find some sort of a rubber washer or grommet to go in there, because I think part of the reason why this was seized up is because when I took it apart there was some sawdust in there, and I'm amazed that sawdust managed to find its way into this plunger area, into the plunger bore, but that might have dried out some of the oil and introduced some contamination and caused the plunger to seize in there. Actually, it was the O-ring, the old O-ring, I think, collected a lot of junk, and that's what really seized it up. The plunger itself wasn't rusted or anything, really. But that's it. And you can see, even for such a simple job, just fixing an oiler, look at all this stuff I have here. Nuts and bolts, a knife, a flint striker for my propane torch, a couple bottles of various oils, a chisel, everything. But being productive. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps somebody out there who's trying to fix an oiler, a manual oiler on their vintage chainsaw. And as always, come back for more. Thanks for watching. So long for now.